We're hereby calling to order the regular meeting for Morgantown Board of Zoning Appeals for October 19th, 2022, 6:30 p.m. We do have a quorum, so we can proceed. So good evening and welcome to the regular meeting of the City of Morgantown Board of Zoning Appeals. Please turn off all cell phones or other devices that may disrupt these proceedings. It is the duty of this board to consider requests of relief from the requirements of the city's zoning regulations, to consider conditional use permit requests, and to hear administrative appeals. We will conduct business in the following order: review, amend, and approve minutes of a previous meeting, take up unfinished business, then proceed to new business, and conclude with announcements from staff and adjournment. Each request is heard in the order that it appears on the agenda. For each conditional use and variance request, the following is done. I will introduce the agenda item, and the Planning Division will present a staff report which may or may not offer a recommendation. The applicant agent will be asked to present their justification for the request, which may include questions by members of the board. We will then open a public hearing to hear testimony in support of or in opposition to the request. Rules regarding public testimony are as follows. Anyone wishing to testify during the public hearing may do so once recognized by me, or may, in lieu of oral testimony, submit written testimony to the chair. All recognized speakers must approach the podium, state their name and address for the record, and speak clearly into the microphone. All comments must be addressed to the board, should be relevant to the application, and may not be of a personal nature or personal attacks. All speakers will be limited to 5 minutes. If members of the board have any questions of the speaker, that time will not be counted toward her 5 minutes. If there is a large number of speakers, including many who are parts of groups or organizations, I may, to avoid repetitive comments, elect to ask for a representative to speak on behalf of the group or organization. Speakers are notified that irrelevant comments or comments of a personal nature or personal attacks may result in the speaker forfeiting his or her opportunity to participate in the proceedings. I may elect to recognize the applicant agent at the end of the public hearing to provide rebuttal or additional comments, which will be limited to an additional 5 minutes. If members of the board have any questions, that time will not be counted toward his or her total of 5 minutes. After all testimony is heard, I will declare the public hearing closed, and no further public comment will be permitted. Again, uncivil, unruly, or disruptive behavior at any time during this meeting is prohibited and will result in removal from the public meeting. State law requires the board to consider findings of fact for each conditional use and variance request. The request cannot be granted unless the majority of the quorum present finds in the positive of all of the findings of fact. The board may elect to continue the hearing to another date if it needs additional information. Applicants and requesting parties will be notified in writing by the Planning Division of the board's findings and conclusions. Regardless of whether a request is approved or denied, decisions of the board can be appealed to the Circuit Court of Mon County within 30 days upon written receipt of that written notification. Any work done relating to decisions rendered by the board during this 30-day period is at the sole financial risk of the applicant. Thank you for your consideration and respect for these proceedings and all opinions presented during the meeting. So we do have a quorum for the record. So we do have meeting minutes to consider before proceeding to unfinished business and the active cases. Any comments or questions about meeting minutes? Okay. Nope. So this is for the September 21st meeting. We'll go ahead and just vote to accept the meeting minutes. How do we vote? Vote to approve. Those meeting minutes for September 21st, 2022 have been accepted into the record. Before moving on to, unfinished business, includes adoption of meeting calendar for the next calendar year, but maybe we'll just
Can we
take
go
that
down
up
to the end?
at the
'Cause
end.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that'd be good.
absolutely.
I haven't had a chance to look over them all the dates.
Yes, absolutely. So we'll just, we don't have any unfinished business apart from consideration of next year's calendar. We do have 3 cases before us tonight. The first is, bear with me. This first one is going to be, it's a conditional use request for CU 22-05 on behalf of Redmond for 720 Powell Avenue. This is a request by James Redmond for conditional use approval for a youth dance or social club facility and for off-site parking approval as required by Articles 1331 permitted land uses and 1365 parking of the city's planning and zoning code. This is under City Tax District 10, Tax Map 30, Parcel 98B1, Neighborhood Business District. Surrounding zoning includes to the east and west B1, north and south R1A, single-family residential district. Mr. Bonner.
Thanks for the introduction. My name is Rodney Bonner. I'm the senior planner with the city of Morgantown, and my role is to help process the applications and to present a staff recommendation to the board and to answer any questions. So in this case, the applicant is seeking to establish essentially a community live music venue. We don't have a specific line item in the code for live music venue. So there were some options, and we felt like the safest bet to provide an opportunity to look at the proposal and notice to the neighbors is through this conditionally permitted youth dance or social club. I think that the name is a little bit of a misnomer. I think the real essence here is that it's differentiated from other assembly type establishments in that it doesn't sell or serve alcohol beverages. As mentioned already in the introduction, it's in a kind of an interesting B1 zone that's surrounded by R1 on both sides and then some industrial to the other side. I'll go back. Essentially, the entire site is owned by one party who has parcels split up under different ownership structures, but staff do feel like that's important to note. Arguably, at this time, one could find that the off-site parking proposed is not necessarily off-site since it's on the same development site and that it ultimately is owned by the same party, but out of an abundance of caution and in case that ownership changes, we just wanted to have the board's approval, should that be the decision today, in case the ownership changes, to have that already established.
And then just to not to interrupt, but
Okay.
just to clarify, with respect to the parking, is that on a separate parcel?
Well, it could be on both. So I'll show you.
You
in
can
a
address
second.
that,
Yeah.
all right, thank you, sorry.
So the proposed venue would occupy the second floor of this existing building, which is, as you look at it from the street, actually the ground floor as opposed to the basement. And it has somewhat irregular hours. It's not always open 7 days a week. It's more of a event-based and, just open for those scheduled events. 2 to 3 hours in durations in the evenings and weekends. The applicant suggests that they will be closing by 11 p.m. And so this lays out the proposed layout a little bit better. The yellow is your building. There is some non-conforming existing gravel parking here that can certainly be used. And then the applicant is proposing, out of an abundance of caution, that over on this parcel is additional paved parking that could be lined and used. Like I said, because the ownership by LLCs and different ownership structures is technically different and they're separate parcels, the safest bet and the recommendation by staff was to call it off-site parking. It's not on the same parcel, and even if the parcels were contiguous and maybe all under the same exact ownership, it'd be easier to construe it that way. But just to be safe, since the ownership is technically different, although once you move up and dig deeper into those LLCs, it is the same individual. That could change in the future too. So this just kind of establishes it now, and clears up that little bit of a gray area. So based on the zoning, as I said, there isn't a specific line item for live music venue. It could be called there is a line item for assembly space or assembly hall. That would be permitted by right. So I just want to note that. This is taking a little bit extra review and public notice and things like that, just to make sure everyone's on the same page. So staff commends the applicant for going through this process, and taking the safer approach of getting the board's approval for that off-site parking. But based on the fact that there is ample parking within the 300 feet, and that the proposed off-site parking with minimal improvements could meet all of the standards required for off-site parking, staff recommends approval of that. And then regarding the venue itself, staff also recommend approval. We provided a list of conditions. These address just stating that the approval is for a specific space, talking about parking improvements. We can't say the specific number because that will be based on the final layout. We will exclude things like bathrooms and stages from the floor area. But based on that, we did talk about perhaps one additional condition, just to clarify that the amplified music events would end by 11 p.m. Would be one additional that wasn't laid out in the staff recommendation. And that concludes the staff report.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Bonner before we invite the applicant? Is there a representative for this application under CU 22-05? Please come to the podium and just state your name and address for the
Good
record.
evening. James Redmond, 941 South Point Circle, Morgantown.
All right, thank you. And then would you like to give us an overview or?
I think Rodney outlined it pretty well. I mean, what I am trying to do is establish a live music venue at this location. I hesitate to call it a business because it's really just sort of a passion project for me. It's not really intended to generate revenue beyond what would be necessary to keep it open. I'm hoping to serve a set of needs within the local music community that is currently unmet. The first would be a place for younger, developing, so to speak, bands or groups. There's a real stage that I've built into this. At the end of it, if you look at the drawing there, it would be the part farthest
Facing
down.
Marilla Park?
Yes, that is actually the rail trail right
Away
behind
from
it. So
Powell, at the
I'm
opposite
right
end of-
across, if you want to visualize, I'm right across from the skate park. I think actually you can see it in that picture
Right.
right there. A place for younger, developing acts, not necessarily young people, but people that haven't had a lot of stage experience to get a chance to get on a real stage with a real sound system and real lights, and see if they have the chops or the interest to continue to pursue something in music. It creates a space for them to sort of fail without consequence, because the only people that will be coming to this facility will be people that are coming to see those folks. So the other categories I hope to serve are some of the needs of music genres that don't fit well in other locations, and a lot of that would be acoustic, singer-songwriters. My personal preference is I'm especially into string bands and Appalachian music and bluegrass. Doesn't really fit. They don't get a lot of chances in town. And it's kind of hard to play in a loud place. This will really be a listening room if you're familiar with what that concept means. There's lots of them all over the country, none here. Bigger cities tend to have them, so this is a bit of a it's a little bit of a risky proposition for me to see if I can execute it at a population level of 75,000.
Right.
And what's the other one? That's about it. I mean, it's something new, different. I've been in, this is the 7th business that I've opened in Morgantown. The other 6 were all food and beverage related for the most part. And I'm not interested in getting into that again. So this is strictly a hall for music, but it is also an open space that I can use. I hope to serve the dance community, the arts community in other ways. And I just think the ideas will flow once the doors get open and people show up. I'll find uses for it.
Now, so you made provision for amplification, but it sounds as if it's like low volume amplification, just in terms of.
There is a PA system there.
Right.
Am I looking for death metal? And not particularly.
Right.
But I'm not really excluding any genre. But I think it best serves the ones that will work better in a more intimate environment. And most of those do not require amplification beyond, a microphone
Right.
or 2.
Yeah. I guess I was just thinking of in terms of you're at a distance, but you are adjacent to the residential.
Well,
And
I'm
it's
really
not late hours, but still. Have you made any provision for like sound, like even
well,
minimal
I have
soundproofing?
not, and I will tell you why. Because if you're looking at that picture, first of all, this building is about this thick. It was built in the early 1900s, right after World War I, and I have played music and gone outside and stood, and you literally can't hear a thing. This is also Route 7, which is, they call it Powell Avenue, but it's Route 7. It's probably the noisiest street in the entire city. Hundreds of large trucks go by the front of this building every day.
Right.
The residential is across the street, really. There are a few rentals owned by the same individual that owns the property, that are adjacent.
Right.
And then the only other R1 there that would be affected is essentially, he's off the screen right here. He's down here.
Right.
I don't know, I get disoriented if I look at that. But he's a ways away, and he is actually the fellow that mows all this grass for us.
Right.
And he's all in. So he understands his life's going to change a little bit. But he's already been. And then there are other residential beyond him, but if you get to that point, I mean, we're more than, heck, we're probably
Right.
200 some feet away.
And
then there's the creek behind me, and then there's industrial on the other side
right.
of the creek.
And there are trees surrounding to buffer sound
There is.
too.
There is. So I appreciate the problem that loud music could create, but literally, this thing is built like a fortress, and you
It
just
is.
don't hear it, literally. Once you
Right.
get 25 feet away from the side of the building, you just absolutely don't hear it.
Any other questions?
So it's open to the public?
It will be open to the public. This is not as I said, I hesitate to even call it a business. It's more of a project
Okay.
on my part. I hope that it becomes a gift to the local music community when I'm done with it. So it won't have regular hours. Like it will be open. It'll be run more like a theater, I guess, for want of a better description.
Okay.
There'll be a time when the doors open, people will gather, the show will happen, the show will end, the doors will close. That will be the primary way. If I have an art exhibit in there or something, I mean, it'll be open, for but not regular hours and not late at night. And one of the beauties is that I'm sharing the lot with the beer distributor. He is a beer distributor. That's what is in the lower level there. And he is not open in the evening, so this is why the off-site parking, is available to me. He doesn't use it after 4 o'clock. So, but I envision, 3 or 4 events a week, each about three hours long.
Right.
Now, I would, I'll hope that there's more, but 3 or 4 events a week will pay the bills, and so that's
Right.
what I'm kind of shooting for initially.
Did you have any questions,
No.
Mr. Schomburg?
No.
No. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we are, having concluded the presentation by Mr. Bonner and presentation by applicant, we're going to open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak in support of or in opposition to this case, now is your opportunity to do so. All right, seeing no one, we're going to close the public hearing for case number CU 22-05. Do you have any other additional comments, or would you like to speak to the conditions,
Like I said,
just in
I mean,
general?
in general, the conditions are just clarifying any discrepancy and making it clear for the staff going forward and the applicant. The use is limited to the space on the second floor. Not to say that it couldn't be expanded down the road, but if it were to be expanded, that would require BZA approval. Ideally, the off-site parking will access the facility via the Deckers Creek path versus going up to the road. So we have a condition that within 6 months of opening, there would be at least a gravel path connecting the gravel parking area to the trail. And then we discussed one additional condition, that amplified music events end by 11 p.m.
And that's in accordance with city ordinances bearing on
Sure,
noise levels?
yes. Yeah, I mean, it does seem like a benefit to the community, and
It's a very interesting proposal.
Yeah, and very straightforward, and I don't see any.
And I mean, I live in Jerome Park, so adjacent to this, and I mean, the lot is well lit, so there shouldn't be any safety concerns there. And truthfully, it's disconnected from the rest of us enough that, yeah, I don't see
Right.
this being an issue.
Do we need discussion regarding the findings of facts as presented on pages 22 and 23 of the meeting packet for CU 22-05? Do we have?
I move that we accept the findings of facts for stated in the packet.
And I'll second that. So we have a motion to accept the findings of fact for CU 22-05. And we have a second. How do we vote to accept or?
Aye.
I'll vote to accept those findings of fact as well. Do we have a motion to grant the conditional use request?
I move that we grant the conditional use request for 2205 with the conditions laid forth in the staff recommendation.
And then there's one more. And then the last one has to be ended by 11.
yep.
Oh, and yes, and that all amplified music ends by 11.
Yep,
Yes.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion to grant the requested conditional use variance or conditional use request for 22-05. We have a second. How do we vote?
Aye.
Aye.
So your request has been granted for your variance, subject to the reference conditions. You will receive written notification of this within, it's usually a week, but please keep in mind that decisions of this board can be appealed to the Circuit Court of Montague County within 30 days following your receipt of that written notice. And any work done during that 30-day period is at your sole financial risk. But good luck with your project, and thank you for coming out this evening. Yeah, thank you very much. All right, so now we move to our second case of the evening. This is, where is it? Hold on a minute. This one is V22-20, City Neon at 244 Beechhurst Avenue. Request by Crystal Miller of City Neon on behalf of Raise the Standard LLC for variance relief from Article 1369 concerning signage. This is referenced as City Tax District 12, Tax Map 19, parcels 124 and 25 in the B2 Neighborhood Business District, the Sunnyside South Overlay District, and BCOD, Beachers Corridor Overlay District.
All right.
Bonner.
Yes, thank you. So the applicant is seeking to install wall signage on a multifamily development structure at 244 Beechhurst Avenue. This is, the location, like I said, is on Beechhurst. It is an area developed with other multifamily and commercial uses. And the proposed design is emulating previously approved signs which required variance approval by the board, I believe, in 2019. There are pictures of the existing materials in the applicant's application packet, which was provided later than the rest of the packet. So these two buildings currently have signage that is similar to what's being proposed and required the variance. For multifamily buildings, the sign standards are a little bit different than what we usually see for commercial signs, in that it's 6 square foot area is permitted on multifamily buildings, and then each additional dwelling unit provides a small amount of additional square footage. In this case, the letter of the code would only permit just under 7.5 square feet. So the variance is for 22, a little under 22.5 square feet. Given that the existing signs don't, well, I don't make a recommendation. So I'll end the presentation there.
And just note that your department doesn't typically
We typically don't make
recommend
recommendations
with
on
respect
signs.
to signage proposals. Do we have a representative for this case?
Hello, Ms. Muller from City Neon, 1095 Clapham Road. So we are hoping to install on the third building signage to match buildings 1 and 2, which say Beachfront 1 and Beachfront 2, and this one would be Beachfront 3. They're trying to keep the units looking cohesive, all the same, so that you can recognize that it's all the same complex. The street view showed the building currently being painted. I believe it is painted all blue now and ready for signage. And we're just hoping that we can keep the cohesiveness of the complex, 1 through 3.
And for the record, the variance request is, it's just for area, not
Just for area. It is
illumination, not materials.
correct, because it is a PVC dimensional ladder. It's 1 inch deep, and it is stud mounted into the wall.
And it would occupy the same footprint roughly as the other 2 buildings?
Correct,
For
yes.
consistency's sake. It's very straightforward.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Ms. Muller, for your presentation. We are going to open a public hearing for this case, V22-20, City Neon, 244 Beechhurst Avenue. Anyone wishing to speak in support of or in opposition to this proposal, now is your opportunity to do so. Seeing no one, we will close the public hearing. Mr. Bonner, do you have any additional
Nothing additional.
comments?
Nope.
And we should note, no conditions. Is that
Correct.
correct?
Yep.
Just for the record? This variance request is just with respect to the area, not for materials or illumination.
Yeah, I mean,
It's very, it's very straightforward. I mean, it will, I mean, it's clearly this signage or the lettering, it's thoroughly consistent with extant lettering on adjacent buildings as part of the same development,
yeah,
same complex. So,
I like it because it's not illuminated. That's just.
right. And for the record, I mean, there won't be any nighttime illumination like spotlighted or, which is a little remarkable, I
Yep,
think.
I move that we accept the findings of fact as stated by the applicant.
Mhm.
Second.
So we have a motion to accept the findings of fact for V22-20 as Well, it's a separate packet, pages 1 through 4, or 3 through 4. So we have a motion to accept and seconded by Ms. Cook. All those wanting or wishing to accept findings of fact,
Aye.
raised. So we've accepted the findings of fact. Do we have a motion to
Yeah, I move to
grant?
grant the variance, for,
B 22-20,
yes.
all right. How do we vote?
Who seconds?
Oh,
I
we need a
second.
second. Thank you. So we have a motion to grant the variance, seconded by Mr. Schumberger. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, so your variance has been granted. As you well know, all decisions of the board can be appealed to the Circuit Court of Montague County within a 30-day period following receipt of written notification from planning, and any work done during this 30-day period is at your sole, or your client's sole financial risk. Thank you for coming out again. Thank you very much. Take care. All right, and then we have one more case. This is conditional use. Oh, wait a minute. Let me make sure that I have the right. Nope, that's the wrong case. Sorry. This is case number, V 22-21, Van Forest -Stewart at 904 Dudley Avenue. Request by William Van Voris for variance relief from Article 1333 of the city's Planning and Zoning Code regarding minimum lot frontage and minimum setback requirements in the R1 zone district. This is referenced to City Tax District 15, City Tax Map 11, Parcel 206 in the R1 Single Family Residential District.
All right, thank you for the introduction.
Thank you.
This project involves a proposed division of one parcel that consists of two old city lots back into the configuration of the two city lots, so creating two parcels out of one. The area is zoned R1, which is slightly different than the R1A. R1A is more of your South Park, older neighborhoods, and the intent was the R1 was more of the Suncrest, slightly larger lots.
Lower density.
Even lower density, correct. So, due to an existing detached garage and lot frontages, the applicant needs two variances, which is the reason they're here tonight, to move forward with the subdivision. The Board of Zoning Appeals doesn't approve the subdivision, that goes to the Planning Commission, but the variances do come to you. So both variances are here. There's no actual development being considered here. There's not a new building or anything. Everything's already on the site. So, regarding the lot frontage standard, it really is, both lots are equal size. There's not a lot of room to wiggle. Both are beneath the 70-foot frontage. For context, the lot frontage in the R1A is around 35 feet. So 70 feet is pretty substantial, and this is these new lots will be consistent with the surrounding neighborhood at 62.5 feet. So, you're looking at a 7.5-foot variance for each lot. We don't see any overarching reason to deny it, so we would recommend approval. And then regarding the shed, the new lot line would be very close to the wall of the shed. For accessory structures, the setback is supposed to be 5 feet. In this case, it's about 1.5, so we're looking at a 3.9-foot variance. The shed's existing, it's been there for a while. The applicant provides good findings in their application, and staff would recommend approval with a variant, or with a condition to provide a 5-foot maintenance access easement so that there's not a new building built in the easement or a fence that would prevent the property owner of the shed from accessing the shed on all sides, which could be difficult if there was only a foot of space. That alleviates any concerns that staff have. I did receive some phone calls asking about it, the project, but once explained, no one had opposition. We haven't received any testimony.
All right, thank you. Do we have a representative for this case, V 22-21? So just state your your name and address for the record.
Robert Berryman, 2917 University Avenue, Morgantown. And
Thank you.
I think Jeff Stewart, who's here, is the actual applicant. I just was working with him and the owner of the property to try to help him split two lots up. It's one tax map parcel number, but two individual lots. And Mr. Boehner explained it. I really don't have anything to add to it. I guess I would say it's completely consistent with the neighborhood up there. Every lot in that originally laid out subdivision was 62 and a half feet. So this is going to remain consistent with that. So we are a little short on the square footage, but everybody in that neighborhood is a little bit short on the square footage. And I don't know exactly how this process goes, but I suppose I'll get an order and that'll say that I'll have to have a mutual easement, which I can incorporate into a deed and present it to you. I don't know if you'll stamp it or whatever that condition is, we'll meet that condition of the order and seek your approval of that.
Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
very much. So we're going to go ahead and open the public hearing for this case, case number 22-21 Van Voris Stewart, 904 Dudley Avenue. Anyone wishing to speak either in support of or in opposition to this reference case, now is your opportunity to do so. Seeing no one, we're going to close the public hearing. Mr. Bonner, do you have any additional comment?
Nothing else to add. One other consideration is that the division does create a new opportunity for an additional small dwelling unit, which is also consistent with most of the surrounding neighborhood, which, I mean, is a positive. You have an additional opportunity for a family to move into the area versus one larger lot with one, substantially larger house, which is different than what was originally built in this area.
Right,
That's all.
all right. Well, it doesn't meet the frontage, the 70-foot frontage, but I do want to just note for the record that it does exceed for parcels in this neighborhood, there's a minimum parcel area of 7,200 square feet. Now, even if subdivided, each of the individual lots will exceed that. So that's sets me at ease with regard to granting. And it doesn't meet the frontage of the 70-foot frontage, and there's the side yard setback with regard to the accessory building. But I don't see that really as an insurmountable, that is workable for me. The property owner's open to the maintenance easement that will be worked into to any deeds that need to be drawn up, either before or during or after Planning Commission takes up this case for the actual subdivision. Do you have any
Yeah.
questions regarding any of
No,
either the case or the findings of fact?
No, I was gonna move that we accept the findings of fact as stated in the packet.
Yeah, they're fairly, and then, yeah. So we have a motion to move, and then we have a second to accept the findings of fact as laid out in pages 40 and 41 of the meeting packet. So we have a motion, second, how do we vote to accept?
Aye.
So we've accepted the findings of fact. Do we have a motion to grant the variance for
Yeah,
this,
I'll
or the
move it.
conditional use?
I move that we grant the variance and the separation Are there two things we're voting on? Do we have to vote separately?
No, it's just one application. There's two components, but they weren't split out.
So you
Okay.
don't need separate motions for the,
Okay.
Correct.
I move that
Subdivision.
we grant the variance with the conditions stated in the packet, and I noted that the condition said 5 foot wide. Was there anything that needed to be added, like you were talking about fences, they can't build a fence, or?
The easement would cover it. all
We cover that,
yeah.
okay. Okay, so I move that we grant the variance with the condition that's stated in the packet.
with regard to the easement?
Yeah.
I will second that motion. So we have a motion to grant for this case V 22-22, and we've seconded it. How do we vote?
Aye.
So this request for V 22-21 has been granted. Sirs, please just keep in mind, decisions of this board can be appealed to the Circuit Court of Mon County within 30 days following receipt of that written notification from planning. And keep in mind, any work done during that 30-day period is at your or your client's sole financial risk. So thank you for coming out this evening. Thank you.
Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, so announcements, we're gonna address the calendar
Yeah.
issue.
let me look at it.
And I think you just wanted to make sure
Yeah, I
that
just want to check
there
the
aren't any
schedule for-
glaring
Right.
conflicts for you before we don't, can we just like not all, or do we need a formal vote to accept the
I would
calendar?
just formalize it
Proposed?
to be safe.
Okay.
They're all the third
It's
Wednesdays
still,
of the month.
so we're not departing from that third
No.
Wednesday.
And I didn't see any obvious holiday conflicts like Thanksgiving or
And the
Christmas, so it seemed to work out.
Valentine's Day,
nicely.
I don't know. Day
Is it?
before. No.
Day after.
No, although, when's, wait a minute, let me
No.
just, or if someone's got their phone, can you just, when's MLK for January?
Oh,
Isn't
that
it
doesn't-
around?
No, it's 21st.
Is it the 21st? So that isn't
But I
an
don't know what
issue.
it ends up, let me see.
It's always
Is
on
it the
a-
23rd, is it the 23rd this year?
I don't know what it's gonna be for. my
Anyway,
phone won't
no, it
turn
doesn't
on.
hit it, doesn't hit it, anyway.
Okay, so we're good.
Um,
And we're good for
It's
December, and November looks good, and, yeah, that looks good. Logan, do you see any, I don't see any potential for conflicts.
I'm good, okay, I'm good.
So, is everyone in favor of adopting, accepting the
Yeah, I move we
proposed
accept
calendar?
this calendar for next year.
Okay, we have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
So the proposed calendar, meeting calendar for calendar year 2023 has been duly accepted.
Great.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
And we have a second, and we are hereby adjourned. Thank you very much. Just
Thank
give
you.
give them a minute.